Hollywood has long claimed the crown for science fiction, but here's the shocking truth. Some of the most daring, imaginative, and downright wild sci-fi visions came from Japan, and Western fans barely noticed. Think you've seen it all with giant monsters and anime epics? Think again. From punk-fueled chaos to time-bending comedies, Japanese directors have been rewriting the sci-fi rulebook for decades. So, what hidden treasures have you missed? Let's pull back the curtain and find out. Burst City, 1982. If Rebellion had a soundtrack, it would look like Burst City. This film didn't just arrive. It crashed onto the screen like a speeding motorcycle tearing through glass. Directed by Gakuryu Ishii, then a young underground filmmaker, Burst City is the ultimate collision of punk music, dystopian imagery, and political fury. Imagine a world where bikers, bands, and construction workers band together to rage against authority, and you're still only scratching the surface. The movie is pure chaos in motion. Handheld cameras shake as if the operator is part of the riot. Punk bands perform live as fights erupt, and the soundtrack blares like an alarm that refuses to shut off. Western audiences who saw this for the first time often thought it was a documentary that had lost control. That's the genius of Ishii's vision, blurring the line between narrative and raw rebellion. What makes Burst City so important is not just the story, but the energy. It became the spark for Japan's cyberpunk wave, influencing not just local filmmakers, but Western auteurs too. Quentin Tarantino and other indie directors have cited Ishii's approach as a blueprint for unleashing raw, unfiltered imagery onto the screen. Without Burst City, the neon-drenched dystopias of later Japanese sci-fi might never have been born. The film also reflects the social unrest of early 1980s Japan. Youths felt trapped by rigid systems and economic pressures, and this movie gave them a cinematic scream. It wasn't pretty, polished, or even always coherent, but it was real. And that rawness became its power. Today, watching Burst City feels like plugging into an electric socket of rebellion. For Western fans used to clean-cut sci-fi epics, this one is a shock to the system in the best way. Returner, 2002. If The Matrix left you breathless, Returner shows you how Japan reimagined that kind of high-concept spectacle with its own unique flavor. Directed by Takashi Yamazaki, the film blends sleek visuals, razor-sharp action, and a heartfelt story into one stylish package. It opens with a young woman from the future named Millie, who arrives in the year 2002 to stop an alien invasion that threatens humanity's survival. But here's the twist. Instead of teaming up with a polished hero, she ends up working with a small-time gunrunner named Miyamoto. At first, their partnership feels like oil and water. She's mission-driven, he's out for himself. Yet, as the story unfolds, the film cleverly plays with trust, loyalty, and the surprising ways ordinary people can rise to extraordinary challenges. The action sequences are polished with early 2000s CGI that, while clearly inspired by Western blockbusters like The Matrix and Mission Impossible, never feel like carbon copies. Instead, Yamazaki uses them to push the narrative forward rather than just dazzle. The bullet-slowing stunts and acrobatic shootouts are fun, but what sticks is the chemistry between the leads and the bigger question the movie asks. What truly drives people to change? Western fans often missed Returner because it didn't have the marketing push of Hollywood giants, but those who discover it realize it's a gem that balances style and heart. The villain, Mizoguchi, played with gleeful menace, feels like a character ripped from a graphic novel, larger than life, unpredictable, and unforgettable. In the end, Returner is a love letter to both Japanese and Western sci-fi traditions, merging them into something fresh. It's the kind of film that reminds you why science fiction matters, not just for the spectacle, but for the human stories hiding inside the explosions. Ignore it, and you miss one of Japan's boldest entries into modern sci-fi cinema, Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes 2020. What if the future wasn't decades away, but staring back at you from your cafe TV just 2 minutes ahead? That's the premise of Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes, a micro-budget Japanese indie that proves you don't need a massive budget to blow minds. Directed by Junta Yamaguchi, this quirky sci-fi comedy became an instant cult hit by turning the smallest time travel window into a roller coaster of paradoxes and laughs. The setup is deceptively simple. A cafe owner named Kato discovers that his television is mysteriously linked to another screen in his upstairs apartment. The kicker? The upstairs feed shows events exactly 2 minutes in the future. Naturally, Kato's friends get involved, and what starts as playful curiosity soon escalates into a wild spiral of overlapping loops, endless what-ifs, and hilarious missteps. Shot to look like one continuous take, the film carries a thrilling sense of momentum. You feel like you're running alongside the characters as they race to keep up with their own futures. Despite being made with a shoestring budget, the film radiates creativity. Instead of expensive effects, it leans into clever editing, sharp timing, and performances that balance awe with comic disbelief. What really makes Beyond the Infinite 2-minute special is its tone. Unlike dark, brooding takes on time travel, this one is lighthearted, whimsical, and grounded in everyday humanity. It asks, what would ordinary people actually do if given a tiny glimpse of the future? The answer isn't save the world, it's more like play silly games, mess up, and try again. And, somehow, that feels far more real. For Western fans, this is one of those hidden joys of Japanese cinema, refreshingly inventive, disarmingly funny, and surprisingly heartfelt. It shows that sci-fi doesn't always need to be about saving galaxies. Sometimes, it's about what you do with the next 2 minutes. Battle Royale, 2000. Forget the Hunger Games. Long before it, Japan gave us Battle Royale, a movie so ferocious and uncompromising that Western audiences didn't quite know what to do with it. Directed by Kinji Fukasaku, the film imagines a government program where a class of 9th graders is forced onto an isolated island, fitted with explosive collars, and told to fight until only one survives. The result? A cinematic powder keg of chaos, heartbreak, and biting social commentary. At first glance, it's pure shock value. Teenagers turned against each other in brutal fashion, but underneath the violence lies a razor-sharp allegory about authority, youth rebellion, and the fear of a generation spiraling out of control. Fukasaku, who had lived through the bombings of World War II as a child, brought his personal understanding of survival, fear, and disillusionment into every frame. This wasn't exploitation, it was exorcism. Each student in the film represents a different response to crisis. Some form alliances, others fall apart, and a few reveal chilling instincts when pushed to the edge. The collars ticking down time add relentless suspense, turning even moments of quiet into nail-biting tension. By the end, Battle Royale feels less like a movie and more like a survival experiment you've been trapped inside. The film sparked global controversy upon release, with critics both horrified and fascinated by its premise. In Japan, it became a cultural flashpoint, debated endlessly in media and classrooms. In the West, it lurked underground for years, passed around as a cult secret before finally getting wider recognition. Today, it stands as a landmark of Japanese sci-fi dystopia, a daring work that dared to say, what if society's darkest fears about its youth came true? If you think you know Deadly Games stories, you haven't seen anything until you've faced Battle Royale. Casshern, 2004. If you want a film that looks like it was ripped straight from the pages of a graphic novel, Casshern is your pick. Directed by Kazuaki Kiriya and released in 2004, this live-action adaptation of a classic 60s anime feels like a fever dream brought to life. It's bold, operatic, and visually unlike anything Western audiences had seen at the time. The story is set in a dystopian future where endless wars have poisoned the planet. A scientist creates a technology called neocells to restore life, but instead, it spawns an army of superhuman beings bent on revenge. Enter Casshern, a fallen soldier reborn with incredible power, who becomes humanity's reluctant savior. The movie plays out like a mythic tragedy, mixing giant battles with intimate questions about war, identity, and redemption. What makes Casshern unforgettable is its style. Nearly the entire film was shot on green screen, with hyper-stylized sets and digital backdrops, giving it a painterly, surreal quality. At the time, it was revolutionary, predating the techniques later popularized by films like 300 and Sin City. The visuals are drenched in metallic colors, thunderous skies, and dreamlike imagery, creating a world that feels both futuristic and haunted by history. Western audiences who discovered Casshern were divided, some dazzled by its artistry, others overwhelmed by its density. It isn't a film that hands you easy answers. Instead, it asks big questions. What is the cost of war? Can revenge ever heal? What does it mean to be human in a world built on destruction? Though it didn't achieve mainstream global recognition, Cashern has lived on as a cult favorite and an influence on visual storytelling. Its mix of philosophy, action, and style makes it a rare sci-fi gem that lingers in the mind long after the credits roll. For fans who think they've seen it all, Cashern is proof that Japanese sci-fi still has surprises left to deliver. The Mysterians, 1957. Long before Hollywood was throwing massive budgets at alien blockbusters, Ishiro Honda, the visionary behind Godzilla, crafted The Mysterians, a film that dared to mix spectacle with social commentary. Released in 1957, it tells the story of an alien race who arrived not to destroy Earth outright, but to demand land and women to ensure their survival. What follows is a pulpy, high-energy clash of ideals, wrapped in dazzling miniature effects and a rousing score by Akira Ifukube. At its heart, The Mysterians is a Cold War allegory dressed as monster sci-fi. The aliens, with their advanced weaponry and colossal robot Mogera, stand in for looming superpower threats. But Honda's message was surprisingly hopeful. Instead of East versus West divisions, he imagined humanity uniting as one global force to resist. Watching it today, you can feel that post-war yearning for peace stitched into every explosion and beam of light. Visually, the film is pure spectacle. The Mogera stomps across miniature villages, crushing buildings while tanks and jets unleash volley after volley. Sure, the effects look dated to modern eyes, but that's part of the magic. You're not just watching a story, you're seeing a team of craftspeople push the limits of what cinema could achieve with models, sets, and imagination. For Japanese audiences, The Mysterians reinforced Honda's status as a master of spectacle. For Western fans, though, it slipped into the shadow of Godzilla. And that's a shame, because this film represents an early milestone in how Japanese cinema tackled global themes through sci-fi. It may not be sleek by today's standards, but its heart, ambition, and sheer creativity make it a masterpiece. If you want to understand where Japanese science fiction got its voice, start here. Latitude Zero, 1969. Now here's one that feels like it was beamed in from another dimension. Ishiro Honda strikes again with Latitude Zero, a strange, campy, and utterly fascinating slice of Japanese sci-fi released in 1969. At first glance, it looks like a pulp adventure novel brought to life, complete with submarines, underwater utopias, and villains in outlandish golden diving suits. The story follows three men who are rescued by Captain Craig Mackenzie, the mysterious commander of a submarine called Alpha. They are taken to Latitude Zero, an underwater city where people don't age and technology seems decades ahead of its time. It's a paradise, but paradise never comes without enemies. Enter Dr. Malik, a rival submarine leader who hatches schemes to destroy the city and its ideals. What follows is a roller coaster of rescues, bizarre creatures, and explosions that could make James Bond blush. Yes, the costumes are ridiculous. Joseph Cotton, playing Captain Mackenzie, wears a flamboyant shirt that looks like it belongs in a disco more than a submarine. The villains strut around in costumes that feel like someone raided a children's toy chest. But here's the secret. That campy absurdity is exactly what makes the film unforgettable. Western audiences often dismissed Latitude Zero as too silly, but that misses the point. Underneath the eccentricity lies a fascinating optimism about the future. It imagines a world where science can create peace, longevity, and harmony, if humanity can resist greed and destruction. If you're a fan of colorful, over-the-top adventure that wears its heart on its sleeve, Latitude Zero is the hidden treasure you didn't know you needed. Summertime Machine Blues, 2005. Sometimes the best sci-fi doesn't involve saving the world. Sometimes it's about fixing a broken air conditioner remote. That's the genius of Summertime Machine Blues, a comedy from Katsuyuki Motohiro, released in 2005. On paper, the plot sounds absurd. A group of college friends discover a time machine, and instead of stopping disasters or meeting future selves, they use it to repair their air conditioner in the sweltering summer heat. What makes it work is how delightfully ordinary the characters are. These aren't chosen heroes. They're just lazy, goofy students fumbling their way through paradoxes they barely understand. The film leans into this simplicity, turning small-scale mishaps into hilarious time loops and misunderstandings. Every solution creates a bigger problem, and the joy comes from watching them dig deeper into their own mess. Stylistically, it's light and breezy. Motohiro uses clever camera tricks, fade-outs, and sharp editing to keep the story moving without ever getting bogged down in technical details. Unlike Hollywood's love for complicated timelines and apocalyptic stakes, this film reminds us that time travel can be silly, charming, and deeply human. The heart of Summertime Machine Blues lies in its relatability. Who hasn't wished for a quick fix to a dumb mistake? By shrinking sci-fi down to the scale of spilled soda and remote controls, the film becomes both hilarious and oddly profound. It tells us maybe the big questions about time aren't as important as how we handle the small ones. Western fans often overlook this gem because it doesn't scream epic, but that's exactly why it stands out. It's playful, memorable, and a reminder that sci-fi doesn't always need to be heavy. Sometimes, the best time travel story is the one where friends just want their AC back. Crazy Thunder Road, 1980. Before Burst City set the cyberpunk standard, there was Crazy Thunder Road. Originally made as a student film by Sogo Ishii, later known as Gakuryu Ishii, this gritty tale of biker gangs and societal collapse became so raw and powerful that Toei Studios picked it up for theatrical release in 1980. For an underground project to break into mainstream cinemas was unheard of, and that alone makes it historic. The story follows a biker gang leader navigating the crumbling loyalty of his crew, rival factions, and the suffocating pressure of a society that wants to wipe them out. But don't expect a polished narrative. This film thrives on chaos, screeching engines, smoke-filled streets, and fights that feel ripped from the nightly news of a restless Japan. It's loud, messy, and relentless, almost daring you to keep up. Unlike traditional sci-fi epics filled with lasers and spaceships, Crazy Thunder Road brings dystopia down to earth. It presents a future that feels disturbingly close. Youth left behind by rapid modernization, carving out identity in rebellion. Ishii was still a student when he made this, but his ability to channel anger into kinetic energy was beyond his years. His camera never sits still, and his characters burn with restless urgency. Western audiences rarely saw this film because it lacked the international push that titles like Akira later enjoyed. But for those who did stumble across it, the influence was undeniable. Crazy Thunder Road became a cornerstone for Japan's punk cinema movement and laid the groundwork for the explosive anarchy of Burst City. Watching it today feels like finding the diary of a rebellious teenager written across an entire city. It's not neat, it's not clean, but it's honest. And in that honesty lies its brilliance. The Man Who Stole the Sun, 1979. Few films capture paranoia, absurdity, and dark humor like The Man Who Stole the Sunday. Directed by Kazuhiko Hasegawa, this cult gem from 1979 tells the story of Makoto, a disillusioned high school science teacher who decides to build a nuclear device in his tiny Tokyo apartment. No alien invasions, no giant monsters, just one man tinkering in secret, and the chaos that follows. From the start, the film plays less like a thriller and more like a satire of authority. Makoto doesn't fit the mold of a genius mastermind. He's ordinary, aimless, and perhaps that's what makes him dangerous. When he succeeds, he suddenly holds the ultimate bargaining chip, and his clashes with a determined detective spiral into a battle of wits dripping with irony. Visually, the movie captures late 70s Tokyo in all its grit and uncertainty. Crowded classrooms, cluttered apartments, and bustling streets ground the story in realism, making the absurd premise hit harder. And while Western cinema of the era often leaned toward flashy spectacle, Hasegawa chose restraint, building tension through atmosphere and Makoto's increasingly unhinged choices. The brilliance of The Man Who Stole the Sun lies in its ambiguity. Is it a comedy, a political critique, a cautionary tale? In truth, it's all of these. The film refuses to give clear answers, instead leaving viewers unsettled by how close its satire hits to reality. For Western audiences used to tidy resolutions, that ambiguity may have been why it never gained wide recognition. Yet, among those who've seen it, the film is revered as one of the most daring Japanese sci-fi thrillers of its time. It's a reminder that science fiction isn't always about rockets. It can be about the uneasy questions lurking in our own backyards. So there you have it, 10 Japanese sci-fi masterpieces that Western audiences mostly overlooked. From punk-fueled chaos to tender comedies about broken remotes, these films prove that sci-fi in Japan is more than monsters and mechas. It's rebellion, invention, and imagination at full throttle. Which of these hidden gems will you hunt down first? Drop your pick in the comments, hit like if you learned something new, and don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into cinema's overlooked corners. The future of film might just surprise you.